What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here once again. And I tell you what, like I keep saying, there's never a dull day in Tottenham. Never a dull day. It's either in, out, shake it all about. And today is absolutely no different. Bloody hell.
Another day, another sacking.
Yeah, it's crazy what is going on. As Alistair Gold has revealed, there's been a backroom shake-up in the wake of Igor Tudor's announcement as the new interim Spurs boss. So, in terms of the exits, Joe Newton, who arrived from Brentford, he's gone now. Chris Howsam, who joined from Brentford, he's gone now. Justin Cochrane, who's joined from Brentford, he's gone now. And as well as Johnny Heitinger, who joined the club 33 days ago as assistant manager, he has also been sacked from the backroom staff at Tottenham Hotspur, which leaves Ivan Djurcic and Ricardo Ragagnici, and also Tomislav Vrogic, who's coming as goalkeeper coach, which is very interesting because Fabian Otte has also kept his job in terms of, because he was brought in as a goalkeeping coach, and Andreas Jorgensen, the set-piece coach, has kept his job at Tottenham. So it looks as though that everyone that has come from Brentford have lost their job, but Fabian Otte and Jorgensen, who didn't come from Brentford, have both kept their jobs.
You'll know definitely Joe Newton from that famous picture with Thomas Frank holding the Arsenal Cup, and he's looking at the cup and he's got his eyes wide open, like in shock, like what the hell is he doing? So maybe that cost him his job, not telling Thomas Frank he's holding an Arsenal Cup. But he's done a few videos, I think, earlier this year. I think he did one with Ben Haynes earlier for Spurs Play about his job as an analyst. And you know what? I was watching that video and there was a few things, you know, that kind of, there was a few red flags with that video, because he was kind of talking about, he was asked, you know, you do all this analysis, like, how do you like know what's relevant and what's not? And he was like, I don't really know. I just kind of give them the information and they kind of decide. I was like, okay, that's fantastic, isn't it? Anyway, so he's out the door. Cochrane, there was a big hullabaloo, wasn't there, at the start of Frank's tenure? We were trying to get him before Frank was appointed. Some even suggesting Frank wouldn't come without him, or something to that effect. Cochrane was obviously potentially in the running for the full-time Brentford job, wasn't he? He was mooted for that. So he was seen as a big coup to get him in. He's obviously coach at England as well. So I don't know how I feel about losing him. Obviously, whatever has happened during his tenure hasn't worked, and if he's kind of been advising Frank, and if he's kind of Frank's run things by him, he hasn't done his job of advising him in the right way, because our football has been dreadful and he hasn't been able to help that. But when it comes to Johnny Heitinger, 33 days as assistant coach, is that the shortest tenure as assistant coach in history? Yeah. Must be up there for the shortest tenure in Premier League history. But I think what we can learn from the fact that he's left as well is this pretty much confirms this confirms the story that Paul O'Keefe said a few days ago about Vinay and about the Lewis family stepping in and having Vinay and Lange sack Frank, and that they wanted Frank to stay and they hadn't even considered sacking him, and they were very much on the side of we need to keep him, because you wouldn't hire an assistant manager who's clearly tied to Thomas Frank. That's evidenced by the fact he's left now. So he is tied to Frank. So the fact that they hired him 33 days ago, that was a few days before the West Ham game. That tells me that before the West Ham game, they had no thoughts about sacking Thomas Frank, and he wasn't in any danger. And for me, that is absolutely nuts, and it just goes to their incompetence, that there was no forward thinking and there was no proactive thinking about this actually might not work and he's not the right guy. The fact they hired him and now they ended up firing him 33 days later is evidence of that. So it's crazy to me that we've left ourselves in this situation, and the incompetence, I think, from Vinay and Lange is there for all to see. They need to be next on the chopping block. Let's hope we hear that sooner rather than later. I reckon we'll probably hear it at the end of the season. I think they'll probably see out the season, and then we hear at the end of the season they're gone. But I think they're dead men walking for me, and I think this is more evidence of it.
I really hope so. I mean, it definitely goes to show that they just kept backing him until, you know, other people stepped on their toes. So yeah, I completely agree with that. But yeah, it's just really interesting, isn't it? Because like there are all these conspiracy theories around Johnny Heitinga saying he's been brought in to maybe take that interim role. He's been brought in to maybe review of an Arnie Slot coming in the summer. Well, obviously that was all just absolute gobbledygook.
I think Tottenham fans look at these things and think there's like 4D chess being played, right? And they think he's coming in for Slot and like he's coming in because Frank's on his way out and we're going to get an interim. Where we didn't expect the incompetence of this hierarchy. So we expect the fans are more.
We should have though.
Yeah, I know.
We should. Why do we not expect it every year?
I'm just saying we were more proactive than the. Than the hierarchy in this sense. It's almost like, I don't know if you've seen like I can kind of compare it to like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things. Hear me out here, let me land. There's like all these plot holes that come out in the final seasons of these shows, and people kind of explain them away because they think, oh, the writers are thinking this or thinking that, and they're coming up with all these theories why this plot hole existed, for why the writers put it in. They can explain it in all certain ways, but actually the writers are just incompetent and they overlook these things. And that's exactly the same with Tottenham. Heitinga comes in, he's coming in for Slot, he's coming in for all these different things, but actually they're just incompetent. And actually they did just give Frank an assistant manager, even though they should have seen he was on the brink of sacking, and that we shouldn't be hiring more people for this manager because with another loss or in the very near future he could be gone. And yet the V9 Lange didn't think that far ahead, unbelievably. And everyone could see that Frank wasn't going to last this season, or was very likely he wouldn't. And especially, the funny thing is, Heitinga should have really been gone after one game because that now it kind of makes sense that he even got another month, because that one game West Ham, everyone was saying, okay, he has to go. But they were thinking, we've just hired Heitinga literally one game ago. What an awful look it would be to lose an assistant manager after one game. So they kind of gave it a few extra games, it looks like, but then it kind of became very clear, untenable. It can't work. He has to go, and Heitinga's gone with him, and it's absolute mess.
He was apparently first. Well, the rumours were that he was first on the list to beat the interim. So maybe if they didn't give him the interim, they had to let him go. But yeah, I think it's just madness, absolute madness. But the thing is about Justin Cochrane, obviously we were excited, like you mentioned, about bringing him in, but get these gooners out the door, man. Seriously, like that's one of a domino that needs to fall, as long as with Vinay and Johan Lang as well. But the less gooner infiltration, the better for me. And look, I was one that was excited for Justin Cochrane, but it just hasn't worked out by any stretch of the imagination. So I think it's right for these guys to leave their post. But one thing I found interesting is now Spurs have 2 goalkeeping coaches on the backroom staff. So he's brought one in with Rogic, and we've also got Fabian Otte that has retained his job as well. So what can you learn from that? Unless they think that this guy's just brought in as a short-term option from now to the end of the season, and Fabian Otte is going to stay on with whoever the new coach is and the new manager is.
Yeah, that's the kind of what I feel. I feel this Rogic guy, he's obviously been following Tudor around in some of his previous jobs. And we know that Tudor is unlikely to see out the season. So Fabian Otte, hopefully, is going to be our long-term goalkeeping coach. I don't know, was he brought in with Frank? He was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But he is a goalkeeping coach, so necessarily it could translate to future jobs. I think when it comes to an assistant, they're very closely tied to the first team manager and the analysts as well. I guess you could have kept Joe Newton on if you thought he was doing a good job, but clearly they just didn't feel like he was. Maybe they felt Otte is doing a fine job, although Vicario hasn't exactly improved, has he, this season? You can very strongly argue he's gotten worse since last season. So wherever they feel like he's a long term, we know with Rogic, he's probably going to be leaving at the end of the season because he's a short term fix. So they probably thinking, do we want to go for another goalkeeping coach in the summer, or we can just keep on Otte? So that's probably it.
Also, another point worth noting is that if it is going to be Poch that comes in, Tony Jimenez is always his goalkeeping coach. So maybe...
Yeah, that's also a good point.
So... yeah, I'm not really sure what to make out of that. Unless they're just keeping Fabian Otte on until the summer, just to doubly make sure, like, who's going to be on that, who's going to be the manager, what kind of staff is he going to bring in, and can he make do with someone like Fabian Otte? Because he's got a good history behind him with his days at Liverpool.
Yeah, he does. So, yeah, look, I don't know exactly what the thinking is. It's great that Jorgensen knows staying on.
That's the big one for me. Yeah.
Everyone was saying he's the one doing his job. Our set pieces have actually been very good, so that's one thing Frank and the coaching staff can take credit for. We actually have been very good at set pieces, albeit we rely on them too much, but by the by. So hopefully if we can actually be good when the game is playing, and apart from just when there's a set piece, maybe we can actually be a decent team.
Yeah, absolutely. But these guys that he's brought in, this is like his trusted guys that were with him at Juventus last season. With Lazio as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all kind of plays out on the pitch. We need to see something better, and I think it's time for the fans just. Even if you don't think this guy, if it's a good appointment, but we just need to get behind it, don't we? Because we need to show support for the team to get through this difficult period.
I think the fans will. I think the fans always do, in general. I understand there's a kind of narrative around Tottenham fans. They're toxic, they're hard to please, they're deluded in terms of what they expect too much and all this kind of stuff. I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. I think the Tottenham fans expect Spurs to be where they should be, which is, given our revenues, we should be in those top 6 conversations, obviously hoping for Champions League. We should be in that Champions League conversation at the very least, but we're hoping to be Champions League regulars, in the long term for sure. I don't see why not with the revenues that we generate. We've got the money, we've got the infrastructure. There's no reason why Tottenham shouldn't be competing for those Champions League places year in, year out. All I think they expect is when we're on the pitch, we have a team that try and win games, try and stamp themselves on the game, not just sit there and defend all the time, not just play long ball. Have a plan to attack teams, take the game to the opposition, and have a game of it. If we lose, we go down trying, not waiting to die, which is your favourite phrase. We always go and not expect to win, but give it a go and throw caution to win and risk and have a panache about the way we play. We're not expecting ourselves to be prime Barcelona every single week, but we expect to watch a team try to play football, try to excite, and try to throw caution to the wind, and not a team that's scared to play and try, as Danny Blanchflower say, win by boring the opposition to death. That is not what we expect from our football team. And when we see that, we're going to complain and we're going to let our voices be known. So I don't like that. I think the Spurs fans, as long as there's a team out there trying and going for it, even in these little periods in the last few weeks, yes, it's been toxic. Yes, there's been booing, but whenever we've seen the team, those little spurts, go for the opposition and put the game on them, all of a sudden the crowd have picked up a bit, haven't they? And they've got behind the team. We don't expect a lot. We don't need a lot to get behind this team. We are dying to have a team we can get behind. But at the end of the day, when we're being served what we've been served over the last few, especially last couple of years at home, there's going to be toxicity. And I think in most clubs in our position, the fans would be the same. So this narrative about Tottenham fans is rubbish. So for me, they will get behind Tudor, especially in the early weeks, if we're seeing what I'm saying we want to see. And yeah, we might lose games, but I think we will get behind the manager.
If Tudor gets the result against Arsenal, he's got more credit in the bank than Frank ever had, probably. Literally.
He's probably done a better job already. If he can get a draw, I think people will all of a sudden be on him. So look, we all know that Tudor has a lot. Needs to do a lot if he's going to get this permanent job. No one's expecting him to be here beyond this summer. So it's all about this mini period. Could he leave a cult hero, having saved us relegation, maybe a couple of big wins in there against some good teams, and maybe even a Champions League run, who knows? Well, no one's expecting him to come in here and perform miracles. He just needs to do enough to keep us up.
Yeah, I've been hearing a narrative about Igor Tudor's contract, because it is obviously till June, no option or any sort of thing to suggest that it can extend. So they're saying, what incentive does he have to actually come in and do well for Spurs? But I'm so sure, first of all, he's not going to want to be the guy to take Tottenham down. That's first and foremost for his career. And second of all, I'm pretty sure there's got to be some sort of incentivized bonuses for Igor Tudor in his contract. You know what I mean? So I think there's enough incentive there for him to want to come in and do a good job at Tottenham.
100%. And not just that as well. I'm sure there's great incentives, but we've seen you come into the Premier League, even for a short amount of time, and you can get other jobs off the back of it. You can get Premier League jobs or bigger jobs. I know he's had big jobs in the past, but obviously, clearly, there are doubts about him, or he seems to blow up after a certain amount of time or fall out with the hierarchy. But if he comes in and does a good job at Tottenham, people will definitely look at that. You even look at Sherwood. He got a full-time job off the back of his interim spell at Spurs. Yeah. And even though we didn't even particularly like him at Tottenham, he got the Villa job off the back of it. Obviously, he didn't do too well there. I'm just saying,
But he got the job, yeah.
But he got the job. Van Nistelrooy got a job after off the back of 4 games at Man United manager. He got a job. So there's very much enough incentive for all these managers who come in, even if it's an interim, to do well.
Yeah, exactly. Putting himself in the shop window, that's for sure.
Someone says there's Tudor got a song. Well, apparently we've the Spurs song sheet have already created a song for Igor Tudor, Oasis. He's Croatian. He's on a 3-month vacation. He's saving us from relegation. Igor Tudor.
Brilliant.
There we go.
That is brilliant.
There we go.
Look, I'm delighted that Jorgensen's staying, because when Frank got sacked, that was the one thing I said. This guy has got to stay, because he has been doing a phenomenal job for Tottenham Hotspur. We are the most dangerous team from corners in the Premier League this season. So if anyone was doing a good job, it was him. But look, this is the backroom shake-up. Heitinger gone, Cochrane gone, Howsam gone, Joe Newton gone, Otte stays, Jorgensen stays, and 3 guys have come in for Igor Tudor as well in his backroom staff. So, yep, first game, North London derby. It don't get any bigger than that. So if we can get a result in that game, then look, if we beat Arsenal this weekend, look, I know it's fanciful thinking, but if we actually go and beat Arsenal this weekend, that is like half the job done in terms of saving us from relegation.
Absolutely, literally, you only need like 3 or 4 wins at the very most. So I think it sets us on the great foot. And as well, I don't want to put too many deluded thoughts in my mind, but if we do beat Arsenal, all of a sudden, what confidence that would give that team in the Champions League, because you've beaten probably the best team in Europe, if we're being honest, and all of a sudden, there's after winning the Europa League last season, that we have that experience of getting through tournaments, and that will give this team a massive boost.
It's written in the stars that we play Juventus in the next round, isn't
guaranteed.
it? It's absolutely written in the stars. Book your tickets,
book your flights to Turin. It's happening, guaranteed.
All right, so that is the news on that. Let's move on to a Tottenham update. There's a few transfer stories to actually talk about today that's doing the rounds in the press. And Calcio Mercato is claiming that Juventus have identified Destiny Udogie as a possible replacement for Andrea Cambiaso, who could be leaving Juventus this summer for around 40 million euros.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, would you listen to offers for Destiny with the situation with his injuries and stuff?
I would.
You really would?
And unfortunately so. He is so injury prone. He can't seem to get ahead of it.
He's so young, though.
I know he's so young, but I think it depends what the offer is. I'm not saying...
Like 40 million?
Yeah, I would listen to it. I think maybe I'd push it to somewhere between 45 and 50 if someone's willing to pay that. But if we can get him, sell him and get a replacement... And look, Udogie fully fit is a 70, 80 million pound fullback. The reality is... he just can't stay fit. He's got big hamstring issues, and it like even recently he comes back 3 games later, he's gone again for another month. It's a massive issue, and I think at the very least we should be planning for him not to be our first choice in a sense that we should be signing a first choice level left back to compete with him. I would rather keep him around and see if we can get ahead of these hamstring issues, and probably have him as, I think at the moment, second choice until he proves his fitness to someone else. But if there is an offer on the table, a decent offer, I would listen to it. Unfortunately, I think we're at that stage. Unless, when he comes back in a month's time, he can prove he can stay fit. But then again, he kind of did last season a bit. He came back, March time, and stayed fit for the rest of the season. Although I think he was being managed for a lot of it for the Europa League games. So you got to take that into account. But it's it's just never gone away, has it? Albeit, in his first season, he did play, I think, 30 games or 28 league games. So he was all right in that first season. But last season, he still had an injury in that first season. Last season, injury ravaged badly. I don't know how many league games he played, but wasn't a lot. And this season, it's been very similar, hasn't it?
So, yeah, 28 games, 25 games, and 13. It's not the worst in the world. 25 games last season. And 28 the year before, so not too different in terms of the 2 seasons that he has spent here. Only 13 this season. I would keep him around, to be honest, because I think he could flourish into a real top-class left-back if he's not already. And I think, at 23 years of age, you can get over these injury problems. You really can. So I would try and avoid it, and like you say, just sign a left back that can compete with him, that is just as good as him or better than him, for that back spot. So you have two of them fighting out. So yeah, I think the best course of action should be to try and keep him around. To be honest, because I think with the amount of football that he's played, I know he's had a lot of injuries, but he still played a significant part of the first 2 seasons that he was here.
We've seen when he's at his best, he's phenomenal. When he's in full flight, there are very few in the league, I believe, who are better than him in that position. So I would, in a perfect world, keep him. I'm just saying, if there is a big offer on the table, I would look at it.
All right, next up, Team Talk are reporting that Newcastle, Tottenham and Aston Villa have joined Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool and Manchester City and Manchester United in chasing Bournemouth's 19-year-old French forward Elie Junior Kroupi, who's had a phenomenal season for a breakout year in the Premier League. Like I mentioned, 19 years of age. What a finish this guy has on him. Can play all across the front three as well. We'll obviously know Tell and Odegaard and these kind of guys really well for his time in the French under-21 team. Obviously, there's a lot of teams chasing him. Could Spurs offer him maybe more guaranteed playing time?
You would think so. The problem is, what do we bring him in for? Is he to be our number 9? Because I think he's more of a shadow striker, kind of Julian Alvarez kind of player. So I think he's best when he plays off someone. I think he looks best for Bournemouth when he's like playing off Evan Nilsson. I think that's so they kind of facilitate that. Now we have at the moment Xavi, Kulusevski potentially come back, and Maddison there. So how can you fit all of them and a Kroupi into the team? I think that would be a struggle, but I do think he's a phenomenal talent. I think he's one of those who's a star in the making. The way he's impacted the Premier League at 19 is phenomenal. He at some points he reminds me of a Julian Alvarez. At some points he reminds me of like a Michael Owen kind of striker, like very nippy in the box. He's got exceptional finishing. I think his size can deceive you. I think he's such a great talent. I wouldn't say no to him. I would love to sign him. It's just all about the dynamic, who our next manager is, how do they fit him in. I could see him very much in a Poch system, working like a Dele Alli kind of player, if whether it be a 3-5-2 in a front two, or maybe Dele playing off like Dele plays off the striker. But it's about how we could fit someone like him in when we have Maddison and Xavi, or do we play him as a number 9? But I do have worries about him in certain games as a number 9 physically. I think there'll be certain games he'll be fine as a number 9, but I think there'll also be certain games where you just need that physicality, and whether he could handle that. Because I think with Bournemouth, they played just this kamikaze kind of chaos football where there's lots of spaces everywhere, and he exploits that. Whereas at Tottenham, we struggle to do that. So that's the only reservation, but I'll definitely sign him if we can. I think he's phenomenal. I really like him.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the physicality aspect, I mean, the more and more he plays in the Premier League and the older he gets, that's only going to get better over time. So
could he be like an Aguero kind of player, maybe?
I think, in a few years down the line, I don't think that physicality aspect is going to be an aspect. I think he'll acclimatise really well. And he's acclimatised well so far in this Bournemouth team, and I think he's just going to get better and better and better. I think this guy has got such a high ceiling, such talent about him. I think Spurs should be doing as much as they can to try and get him through the door, to be honest.
For you, what's his best position? Would you side him to be our starting 9?
I think if you had him and Dom Solanke sharing that 9 role for next season, is that good enough to be like a fully concealed top 4 team? I'm not so sure, but I think he can grow into that role. I wouldn't mind him like playing back up to Dominic Solanke, like them two being the number 9 for next season. But you probably would still want one more in there. The beauty about Kroupi is, never mind what his best position is, he's so versatile and can play many positions. So he'll be a value to the squad no matter in what aspect we bring him in.
Yeah, from what I've seen, he definitely looks better centrally. I don't know, I haven't seen him play too much on the wing for Bournemouth, but he doesn't seem to be a kind of winger. He's
played a couple of games there.
He's definitely a goal scorer, though, isn't he? That's what he is. I think he sniffs a chance in and around the penalty area, and he takes a lot of snapshots, doesn't he? And he catches people out.
And that's what this team is missing desperately, man. We just don't have enough goal scorers in this team, and we need to be adding. That's got to be the key area that we got to add this summer is goal scorers, man.
How much do you reckon Kroupi costs? 1 good year in the Prem at 19, all of a sudden your value shoots up, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think he's gonna cost a pretty penny, 60 million or something like that.
Well, considering Semenyo was 65, wasn't it? And he was on a.
He went for 12 million to Bournemouth.
You're looking at the bare minimum, I'd say 50 at the bare minimum.
Yeah, I think between 50 and 60 million around that ballpark figure.
Might even be more.
I think he's worth that kind of ballpark figure.
Like right now, he's 50, 60. Let's say he gets another 5 goals between now and the end of the season. how many goals would he be on?
Guy scored 8 Premier League goals this season.
So if he gets to 15, I mean, that's doubling his tally. So let's say he gets like 13, 14 at 19 years of age. All of a sudden, you're looking at a 70 million probably pound player there.
You're looking at our forward line, right? Take Richarlison out of it. He's probably scored more than all of them combined.
Yeah,
it's
mad,
crazy.
Yeah, our forward line just hasn't got the goals, has it?
Yeah. But anyway, that is Kroupi. Let me know in the comment section below, would you take Kroupi at Spurs, and what kind of money do you think he will cost in the summer transfer window? Christian Falk, Bayern Munich journalist, is reporting that Chelsea and Tottenham are interested in signing Bayern Munich South Korean centre-back Kim Min-jae. Tottenham's plan to sign a new centre-back next summer are likely to depend heavily on who they appoint as their next manager. I mean, going into this summer window, with a potential return for Vuskovic, I know there's talks about him going back to Hamburg, but unless one's going, of Romero and Van der Ven, is there a desperate need for a centre-back to come in?
What, at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we're probably going to have to get rid of one of Dragoshin or Dan. So, you're saying if Vuskovic comes in?
Yeah.
Probably not, but I think one of them will be going. That's my gut.
Thing is, if Kim Min-jae is going to come in, that surely suggests one of Romero and Van der Ven are leaving.
Sure.
Kim Min-jae ain't coming in to play second fiddle to them two.
100%. There was also, who else we linked with? There was Senesi as well, but obviously if we want to bring him, we probably need him regardless because we just need a backup to Van der Ven. So I think Senesi makes a lot of sense in that sense.
Does he play on the right or the left? Kim Min-jae, it's the right, isn't
I think
it?
he's on the right. I think he can play both. I think for Korea he's played a lot on the left because I think they've got a right footer there. They play with him, but I think he predominantly plays on the right. But similar with Maguire, he can kind of play both sides. He definitely reminds me of Maguire, how he is.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I think he's done, when he's been on the pitch for Bayern, I haven't seen too many problems with him. I think Tuchel didn't like him that much, but Kompany seems to like him. I think he's been all right, but is he good enough to replace Romero Van der Ven? I don't think he's an upgrade on either of those two, to be honest. But I think we are going to struggle to get an upgrade on them, and I think we can do a lot worse than Kim Min-jae.
That's the thing. Like, let's say Romero is going this summer, right? For argument's sake, who can you get that's better than Kim Min-jae to come in?
Yeah, it'll be a struggle to get someone better than him.
He's probably the best available, if he is available. That is.
Yeah, definitely better, as the comments say, better than Dragoshin and Danso for sure. So I think you can maybe as well find a better level of him potentially. Obviously from set pieces he'll be a massive threat as well. So I'm not against it. Obviously, if I'm talking right now, do I want him in? The answer would be no. I'd rather Romero and Van der Ven stay. But if one of them was to go, I think we could do a lot worse.
Absolutely. And last but not least, this was a report from David Ornstein over the weekend saying that Tottenham rebuffed inquiries from rivals for Lucas Bergvall in January. Chelsea and Aston Villa made contact to check the situation while looking to strengthen the midfield amid 20-year-old's reduced role. But Tottenham's clear plan was not to consider any exit for Lucas Bergvall. Obviously, we know that Bergvall was not being profiled properly by Thomas Frank, and he was filling in here, then everywhere but his best position, which was just nuts. When you have a player of this kind of ability, of what he showed last season, getting Spurs as player of the season, and then not to be played in his preferred and best role under Thomas Frank, I thought was just complete nonsense from Frank. And do you think Bergvall was looking at the situation where if Frank stays, he's like, I might have to consider my options here if Frank's going to keep me playing like this?
I don't think so. I don't think he was considering his options. I think Tottenham has been good for him. I think since coming here, he's developed a lot. I still think he does have a lot of developing to do. I think on the ball, he's clearly phenomenal. The way he drives with the ball, I think his ball striking's great. I think he's got good passing on him. I think the thing he definitely has to work on is sometimes his passing can be inconsistent and a bit sloppy on occasion because sometimes he's rushing. I also think out of possession, he can be a bit all over the place. He does I'm talking about positional wise. I think he's very good at using his strength, flying into tackles, and he's one of those players where if you're maybe like a casual fan watching him, he'll put in some crunching challenge and you'll be like, yeah, he really puts in a shift. And I'm not saying he doesn't. My point would be, I think positionally, sometimes he gets, I'm not saying a lot of the time actually, he gets caught out of position and he all of a sudden we're very open in the middle and he gets run past. And I think, and it's not because he's lazy, I think it's just a learning when and where to be. I think especially when we were under Ange and we were relying on him a lot to play centre mid. He was brilliant on the ball, but the problem was off the ball. We just kept getting open up because he didn't know where to be. He was kept getting out of position, and I think when he was pressing, he wasn't pressing at the right times and stuff. And I think that's probably part of the reason why Frank hasn't played them there, because he's always looking at thinking, is he ready out of possession to do what I need him to do? I would argue you play him there so he does get that experience, and you once he gets used to the out of possession stuff and he becomes more reliable, then we'll see him in that position more to a better effect. But Frank's solution was, we're going to play him. We're not going to give him that responsibility. We're going to play him on the wing. We're going to play him in the 10 so he can just concentrate on his on-the-ball qualities. But the problem is his on-the-ball qualities, for me, aren't suited to being a number 10 in a higher up position. He likes to run from deep into the spaces. He's very good at charging into the space. So that's why he looks a lot better picking up the ball from deep than he does in the number 10 position. I also don't think he has the kind of cuteness you need in the number 10 position to pick locks and stuff like that. I think he likes bigger spaces and stuff like that. So for me, Frank profiled him incorrectly and was playing in the wrong position. Maybe there was a case of, if it was this to continue, maybe he felt like, okay, maybe I'm better somewhere else. But I think from Tottenham's point of view, for me, what they should have been thinking was Frank might not be here towards the end of the season, so we might as well think Bergvall's going to outlast Frank anyway. So I'd hold off on any offers. At the very worst, maybe consider putting him out on loan if he's really not happy. But I would never sell him. I think he's too big of a talent. It'll be crazy.
Who the hell do Aston Villa and Chelsea think they are, trying to get Lucas Bergvall in January? That's crazy talk. Like, surely, like, they must have been willing to pay big money, because they weren't going to expect Spurs to let him go for 30-40 million.
No,
surely,
no chance.
Who do they think they are?
Unless they're just testing the waters. I think we've done that, haven't we, with other clubs where we're thinking, can we do something if he's out of favour? But yeah, we're shameless, and they're trying to do the same thing. They're just testing the waters, seeing what. They're probably looking at the situation thinking, Bergvall's been on the bench quite a bit. He's been played out of position. Does Frank fancy him? Is there an opportunity there? If they're, let's say, if they're of the belief that we're trusting in Frank and we're backing him and he's going to be our long-term manager, they're looking at that situation thinking, okay, if that's going to be the case, maybe Frank would be willing to let him go. Look, we were willing to let Johnson go. I know it's a different situation, but Palace tested the waters, didn't they? They said, look, 35 million, are you willing to do it? And we were like, you know what, yeah, because Frank actually doesn't fancy him. And we've now heard from reports that Frank was one of the main ones pushing it because he wasn't in his plans. So he was really pushing Spurs to sell if they could. So maybe they thought, we'll test the waters. Does Frank really fancy Bergvall? Is there an opportunity there to get him out of Tottenham at a time where, you know, for me, it would have been a mistake. But maybe sometimes timing is everything in football. And maybe the timing could have worked out. But thankfully, Tottenham stood strong. And I think that was very much the right decision. It would have been a massive mistake to let him go.
Can you imagine the fan reaction if we would have let Bergvall go to, like, Chelsea? God, there'll be riots on the street, seriously. Like, our player of the year last year. So it would have been that Frank would have come in January sold our top goal scorer and our player of the year from the previous season. But that would not have gone down well.
You know, it's a bit like Kudus with us. It was timing is everything. You know, where the club's at, the club are willing to sell him. And obviously he was willing to go at the time. In a different time period, maybe you go back 6 months or a year, West Ham would have been shut the door in our face. It would have been a flat line no. Sometimes timing is everything. And maybe Villa and Chelsea were saying, could the timing work out? But it didn't. Yeah,
absolutely. But thank God it didn't work out, because I swear I would have lost my shit if we would have sold Bergvall to Aston Villa or Chelsea. I really would have.
For sure. But there's one thing for sure now about Bergvall is it has been 2 serious injuries in the last 2 seasons. So that's something we have to look at as well.
Yeah. I would say that looking at Lucas Bergvall and look at the misprofiling from Thomas Frank, I think that is something that Pochettino is just so strong at in terms of profiling his players and getting the best out of them in certain positions. And I think Lucas Bergvall would thrive so much under Mauricio Pochettino. I think he would probably be one of the biggest winners in this squad under Pochettino, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah, 100%. I think the way his willingness and his eagerness and his energy, I think Poch will love it, and he's got the technical ability to match it. I think, as I say, he needs some refining. He's not like the perfect midfielder yet, but a guy has a serious amount of ability.
Which, at 20 years old, it's very few that are the perfect player at that point. But look, that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts regarding all the news stories that we have brought to you today. Big up, got a lot of people in the live chat today. 2,200 people. Come on,
People
big up
hungry.
to all of you.
They're hungry.
Smash that like button on your way in. Smash that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. We are going to go into a deep dive into Igor Tudor's career so far. We're going to take a look at each and every job that he's done in the kind of big leagues, and we're going to start off with his job in 17-18 at Udinese. So what have we got here?
Yeah, so he's actually done quite a number of jobs in the top leagues. We thought these were the most relevant ones. I don't think people are interested in how we did at Hajduk Split or Galatasaray or any of these other teams, because definitely in recent years, these are the ones that are going to be most relevant to our situations, these interim jobs at a high club. So the first interim job at a top club he did have was Udinese in 17-18. He takes over in game week 35. The team were in 15th in a massive relegation battle. I think were 1 point above the drop zone, and they needed someone to come in and keep them up and make sure they stayed up. They only had 4 games to do it, and not too dissimilar to our situation, but obviously a lot less time. Of the last 4 games, he wins 2, draws 1, and loses 1 of those 4 games. Does end up keeping them up in the division. They end up finishing in 14th. Did his job, came in and did his job. They didn't end up renewing him at the end of the season. He ended up being out of work for a bit, and Udinese came calling for him again, once they were in a very similar situation the next season in 18-19, but this time they gave him a bit more time. So in 18-19, the next season, he takes over in game week 29 this time. The team are in 16th, again mired in a relegation battle, with 9 games to go. He wins 5, draws 3, and loses 3 during his time there. He actually guides them to 12th in the division, and they won their last 3 games to save themselves. They stayed up by 4 points. At this point, he's then given the full-time Udinese job, but is sacked after 10 games of the next season, with the team in 14th, losing 6, winning 3, and drawing 1 of his 10 games, including a 7-1 loss to Atalanta, with the team ending in 13th. So the team didn't actually improve that much after he left. They went from 14th to 13th. But the point is, came in twice to Udinese to keep them up, and did it pretty comfortably both times, and actually improved their fortunes quite well in that time.
I mean, you look at those 2 roles, that's exactly what we need him to do at Spurs, that exact job, win a couple of games, win 3-4 games. If he wins 5 games, that's going to be more than enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think both the stints at Udinese are kind of a similar amount of games that he's going to get at Spurs. Obviously, they weren't in the Champions League, they don't have European football, but in terms of the league, it's not too dissimilar to the positions that are in. Maybe Udinese are in a bit of a worse spot than maybe what Spurs are right now. But if he does kind of replicates that job, everyone's going to be more than happy with it.
Yeah, so he was, I think, guiding a team from 16th in the relegation battle to 12th. That's definitely what we're looking for at Tottenham. But again, sacked after getting the full-time job. That seems to be a theme here with Tudor, which we'll get into. But yeah, that was his job at Udinese. So off the back of that, people started looking at him thinking, okay, he's done quite well there. Maybe he got sacked because the conditions weren't right, and under different conditions he could do a lot better. So he gets another kind of firefighting job-ish at Hellas Verona. 3 games into the season, they've lost their first 3 games. They're mired in 19th place, and he's come in to the job with I think they finished 10th the season before, so they're expected to be a mid-table team. He comes in, first game, they win 3-2 against Roma, gets off to a great start. In his first 10 games, after losing the first 3 of the season, he goes on to win 5, draw 4, and lose 1 of his first 10 games. So a really great start. He ends the season with 2 losses and 1 draw. Ends the season in 9th place with 1.47 points per game, finishing on 53 points. The previous season they finished on 45. So obviously a big improvement. 8-point improvement, 1 place improvement as well. So actually did a very good job at Hellas Verona. Came in, stabled the ship.
So where were they when he
19th after 3 games? But it was
after 3 games.
But they lost all 3. And last season he took off a team that finished last season in 10th. They lost their first 3. Were in 19th. They ended the season in 9th place on 53 points, and the previous season they only had 45. So improved on their total. But off the back of his job at Hellas Verona, very good job there. He didn't stay. He left at the end of the season, and he got the full-time position at Marseille in 22-23. The same season, actually, Spurs were in the Champions League group with them. So he did take over a team who did quite well. They were second the previous season on 71 points. He ended the season finishing 3rd, so 1 place worse. But interestingly, his points total was better. So they actually finished on 73 points, whereas the season before, they finished on 71 points. So actually improved their points total, but it was 1 position down. Champions League didn't go so well. They did lose 4 of their 6 Champions League games. In that, it was a kind of difficult group. I remember it was us, Sporting Lisbon, Marseille, and Frankfurt. So it was quite an even group. They ended up finishing 4th. Well, interestingly enough, in that final group game, there's a famous shot of him on the pitch, right, when Spurs go on to score their winner with Højbjerg. The reason he's on the pitch is because Marseille are going all out for a win to try and save themselves the Champions League. But I don't know if the players realised or not, but if they would have just drawn and settled for a draw, they would have been in the Europa League. And that goal that we scored in the last minute actually cost them a Europa League spot, and they dropped down into 4th. So he was, I think, telling the team, what are you doing? Because I think they left one player in defence and went all basically gung-ho, drawing the game. And if they would have just kept the result, I think he might have maybe got wind of the other result going their way, and they would have got Europa League. And so he was probably frustrated with that, and they ended up finishing bottom. In terms of the job overall, he did win 7 of his first 9 games at Marseille. So got off again, similar theme, storming start, really great results, but he did lose 4 of his last 5 games at the end of the season, costing him 2nd place, and ends up leaving at the end of the season due to differences with the board, which seems to be a common theme. But yeah, his Marseille job did pretty well there, I'd say.
Yeah, in a statement as his parting statement for Marseille, he said that the reason he's leaving is because of his tiredness with the club. So, maybe going to loggerheads with the board about future plans or whatever. But yeah, like I keep saying, like everyone goes on about how this isn't a good fit for us and how everyone's been bringing up those stats of his last 8 games at Juventus. But actually, if you drill in to all of his jobs, he's had a really good start at every single one of them. And that's literally all we need.
That's the most important thing. So after leaving Marseille, he's then out of work for a few months until Lazio come calling. And again, another team looking for a firefighter to stabilise the what's going on. He takes over Lazio in game week 30. They're a team who have lost 5 of their last 7 games. They're in 9th position. They're a team, obviously, I think the season before they finished 2nd. So they're a team expecting to be, in Europe, or at the very least, or at least in Champions League. So he takes over game week 30. He finishes 7th, so an improvement of 2 places, getting them Europa League football. He wins 5, draws 3, and loses 1 of his 9 games, so a pretty decent record. He ends the season unbeaten at home in the 9 games that he was in charge. Again, just like his other clubs, he beats Juventus in his first game. So that's a theme that he comes in and wins his first game and does really well.
Big games as well.
Big games. Again, it didn't end the season too well. He drew 3 of his last 4 and losing 1 as well. So it didn't end the season particularly well for him, which is probably why they didn't keep him on permanently. In the Coppa Italia, they lost in the semi-final 3-2 on aggregate to Juventus. First leg, they lose 2-0 away. Second leg, they're winning 2-0 in going into the last minute, and Juventus get a late dagger right at the end to make it 2-1, which meant they go for an aggregate. But it seemed that they had a good comeback and were unfortunate not to go through. But did a decent job at Lazio, got them into Europa League, which I think last season they ended up going out to Boda, didn't they, without him. So maybe they would have gone further if they would have kept him on. But yeah, I think stabilised, got good results, but didn't get the job permanently off the back of that Lazio job. He then
seems like a very like volatile figure, doesn't he, Igor Tudor? Just like gets that initial burst, but you can't rely on him for like long-term consistency or anything like that. Literally, come in, get the job done, and then dust off.
Literally, and then that's it. At Juventus, so then he takes over Juventus at the beginning of this season, and
well, it was the back end of last season.
Sorry,
It?
back end of last season he takes over Juventus. My bad. He takes over very similar to Lazio. Game week 30. Can you get us a big boost at the end of the season and get us what we need?
They needed Champions League football.
They needed Champions League football. They were 5th when he takes over. The team had just lost 3-0 and 4-0 in their last 2 games. And I think they just got sacked off the back of a 4-0 home loss to Atalanta. So they just had a drubbing at home, which is obviously horrendous. He wins 1-0 in his first game again, another good start. In the last 9 games, he wins 5, draws 3 and loses 1. Identical record to Lazio. Again, unbeaten at home. So that's another theme in those last 2 jobs. He ends up getting 4th by 1 point, so scrapes in there. Mawani scores 3 in 8 games while he's in charge. They actually do end up giving him the permanent job because they were impressed with what he did in the run-in. However, he is sacked 8 games into the season with the team in 8th with 3 wins, 3 draws and 2 losses, with the team winless in 5 Serie A games. He's also winless in 3 Champions League games, 2 draws and 1 loss, including one 4-4 draw with Dortmund at home in a very entertaining game. Losing 1-0 away at Real Madrid as well in one of the Champions League games. And since he has been sacked, the team have improved, with the team now in 5th spot. So there has been an uptick since he left. So, yeah, again, and he ends up getting sacked. But he did what he was brought in to do, which was come in, get Champions League football, and stabilise the results, which again he did. 5 wins, 3 draws. And what was definitely a theme with him is a good home record, which is unbeaten at home. With Lazio and with Juventus, and a very good home record with Marseille as well. So,
I mean, what there is to take from these jobs, like the reasons that he comes in for very specific reasons. Save from relegation, get us Champions League when obviously we're not doing well in that aspect. And he seems to meet all those expectations and meet all those targets that he comes in, and sometimes he gets given the job off the back of it, sometimes not, and there's all various reasons why that does happen. But it seems as though the initial kind of task he always seems to meet.
Yeah, exactly. And if he can, his last 2 jobs is pretty much identical to us, very similar time in the season, around the 30 game mark. And he's done pretty much identical, 5 wins, 3 draws and a loss. If he can basically just get 5 wins, 4 draws and 3 losses, that would be absolutely perfect. That's all we need him to do. And I think they've definitely got the fixtures to do it. And I think we've got the only problem here. The problem I have, I guess the worry for me is apparently he's very intense when it comes to his style of play. Now we have a massive injury list. Yeah. So how are we going to keep up his style of play while also guarding against future injuries? A bit of the problem we had when we definitely under Ange was the last season. The intensity just dropped up massively because we just couldn't be intense without risking further injuries, and we ended up playing a lot lower, a lot lower block and stuff, and obviously it was costing us results as well. But we were just kept losing injuries every single game, and something had to change unless we were just going to continue to pick up injuries game after game. So right now, how is he going to instill his style of play while we have this large injury list? It's not even the case of players buying into or anything like that. It's more of a case of, if he does play this intense style of play, are we going to get more injuries? And is it just going to be a constant cycle of trying to get out of these injury problems? That's the big issue.
Yeah. Look, I would say, obviously Ange had the Europa League and there was crazy amount of games. Obviously he does have the Champions League, but it's not as many games as when Ange first picked up the injury list at Tottenham last season. So in the near future, we're playing one game a week until the very earliest
March, early March.
late March. I think it's late March or mid March.
5th of March.
Oh, is it the 5th of March?
No, you're right. 10th of March.
Yeah, so it's until then. And obviously in March as well, there's an international break. I think there's a weekend break for the FA Cup at some point in there as well. So there are breaks in there. So there are a lot of games, but I think they are quite evenly spread out, particularly from now until the Champions League. And obviously we've just had this week break and we've got a 12-day break from the last game to the Arsenal game. So that should recuperate some energy levels. We're going to have some players coming back towards March and April as well. So... yeah, look, it'll definitely be something that he needs to be wary of, but I'm not as kind of worried as I was with it last season, because there are kind of the fixture list isn't as crazy as it was last year.
I've heard a lot of podcasts talking about his style of play and how he plays. Some people saying he's quite pragmatic and he's actually quite a defensive manager. Some say he's definitely an attacking manager and he's front-footed and he's aggressive. I've seen people describe him as plays Conte football but with a high line, and I think that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, because what happened with Conte is for 6 months it was actually great football, and like, it wasn't just defensive and stuff. Like, we took the game to the opposition, we opened them up. Obviously, it was a lot of counter-attacking, but it was exciting. Some of the football we played was great, but then the next season, it was you could definitely describe that as much more pragmatic and much more low block, and we were struggling to play the football that we were in the early season. So I wonder if that's the point with Tudor. He comes in, and we have definitely a discernible style of play where apparently he does similar to Conte, where these automatisms, like he practices where the passes are going to go on the pitch, on the training ground, like not relying on the players' freedom. So because it's very structured, it's quite easy to replicate on the pitch, but then once the opposition work that out, it's easy to battle against it, because you know what they're going to do. So I feel like probably what teams or fans are seeing is it comes in, he does really well and the football's aggressive and it's good, and then once it starts to get worked out a bit, it turns a bit stodgy and pragmatic because you're on the back foot a lot. So that's maybe where the disconnect is. I'm just hypothesizing. Maybe that's where the disconnect is, where I'm hearing different things from different fans, because maybe it starts out quite aggressive, that's his philosophy, but then by the end of it, the results start to wane, and maybe once it starts getting worked out a bit, he starts being a bit more pragmatic, and maybe that's where this narrative of him being a pragmatic manager comes in. As much as I look at Conte, I don't see him as a pragmatic manager. I think he goes out, you can't win the amount of titles he does just by defending. You have to attack teams and you have to go out and win games, and that's by attacking the opposition. I think he does try to do that, but he does definitely have a pragmatic side once the way his way of playing, his automatisms, like, they stop working. All of a sudden his team get pushed back and he starts like focusing a lot more on defending. And I think maybe that's what we're going to see with Tudor. I think we'll definitely see a bit of a burst early on, and hopefully that's enough. But if it starts getting worked out a bit late on, maybe he starts getting found out a bit. But maybe it's not enough time to do that.
If we don't see that early burst, then that means we're in big trouble.
Yeah, that's what you got to be a bit worried about. That hopefully that early burst is enough.
Because if we don't see it and teams have worked us out from the off, then I don't even say what can happen. But there's been a lot of comments about Igor Tudor saying, well, we're in this precarious situation in the league. We're only 5 points above the relegation zone. We should really be bringing in a manager that knows the league. I've seen, obviously, Teddy Sheringham come on and say that in recent days. I've seen a lot of Spurs fans say something like that. What would you say to those kind of people?
I don't think it's the most important thing, but I think it's a factor. I think it helps, because if you know what kind of the level of the football you're coming up against and the teams really well and how they all play and all this kind of stuff, I think it probably helps, but didn't help Frank, did it? Didn't help Nuno when he was here. So being proven isn't a...
but I'm not...
Isn't a guarantee.
From the off is a different case, as opposed to when you're trying to fight relegation in a game where you don't have, in a league where you don't have too many games left to do so, when you're in the situation that we're in. Like, for example, like all the teams that go for firefighting managers, it usually is kind of Premier League proven. Your Sam Allardyce's, your Sean Dyche's, these kind of guys who know the league like the back of their hand, and they come on, do the job, keep them up, and that's that. Yeah,
but I think these guys are going out of business, in my opinion. I don't think they're the right for them on game. Look, Dyche has just been sacked. I know maybe you could argue whether he deserved it or not, but he has just been sacked. I don't think he's going to get a great job anytime soon, in my opinion. Like, he might get, again, a job similar to what he's just got in Forest, where a team lower down take him on. But I think these kind of managers, people aren't turning to them as much as they used to, for a reason, in my opinion. I don't think...
Well, we haven't seen like a firefighting appointment in a while, have we?
Well, Allardyce got appointed to Leeds, didn't he?
Yeah, like 4 games to go, I think it was.
It was like 5 games to go, and they end up going down. Yeah, it's not been too much of a trend. Teams have I think, what was it, did Lampard's, did he take over at Everton? Well, that's kind of January time, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you're right. Last season, all teams, I'm trying to think. Van Nistelrooy took over, but he wasn't much of a firefighter.
The last 2 seasons, the 3 teams that came up went down.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been, there's not been like a stable Premier League side who's been in need of a firefighting manager.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have needed it. They just haven't turned to the typical ones. Like, who would like? Is anyone desperate to a point right now? You know, Allardyce's and these kind of, and Pardew's, and I just don't. I think games moved on from them. In my opinion, the Premier League has moved on from them. So I don't think, you know, teams are looking at them. So I don't think we should either. To be honest, I don't think that's the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've signed like a European version, haven't we? At the end of the day.
Yes, but in a sense, but bit different. I would say you're not appointing Allardyce to take you from 9th to 7th or 5th to 4th, are you?
No, but what I'm saying is that people appoint Igor Tudor not because they see a long-term vision with him. They appoint him because he needs to do a job. He needs to keep a team up. He needs to get to a team to this place in the league. Mm-hmm. Like, he's very much a short-term fix for all the clubs that he goes into.
I agree, but he has done relegation fights before with Udogie and Hellas Verona, but I wouldn't compare him to like an Allardyce or the other managers we're talking about, because they're literally just for relegation battles. They're not. They very rarely come into if a team's looking to get Europe or anything like that. Whereas he's done it from a bit of a higher level at bigger clubs as well. Yeah. So I would like to think maybe he's a little bit higher level, but we'll have to wait and see kind of how he does at Tottenham. But yeah, I don't know who would a Premier experience be. Obviously, people talk about Harry Redknapp, but I don't know who on the market right now, Premier experienced firefighter, I would really want to take over this right now. In my opinion.
I mean, I was speaking to Stel the other night, and he was just like up in arms about this Igor Tudor coming in, and he said it should have been Redknapp and Tim Sherwood in a combined role. And I'm just saying, like, let's just get behind this guy, man. Let's just get behind him. I think good things can happen if we do. I really do.
I think since the last time Sherwood and Redknapp have been managing, it's been very different, the Premier League, since then. Even I was even talking about how it's been very different since even Poch was there. You know, and that they're a whole different generation to even that.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think these older managers they've had their day. I think it's the Premier League's moved on from them now. Not saying now, and I'm not sitting here saying Tudor is phenomenal and we're guaranteed to stay up now. I don't think that's the case. I think that we're still in the balance, and this appointment's definitely a risk. And the fact he does know the league and all this kind of stuff.
I think that's the biggest risk about it, of him not knowing the league.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a worry for sure. But given the jobs he's done and kind of where he's got the teams he's taken over and what he's accomplished in terms of, he's pretty much achieved what he's needed to at every job essentially before it falls flat and he ends up getting sacked. But in terms of the short term, he's always achieved his short-term goals, and that's kind of just what he needs to do here. Now, I think in terms of gamble, it's probably a safer gamble than, I would say we're better off with this than a Harry Redknapp or a Sherwood or an Allardyce 100%. I'd rather go in this direction for me. But yeah, it's still a risk for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, like we say, I don't think there was any appointment that we could get right now that wouldn't be a risk.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. So I think this is less of a risk than those.
There's been interesting quotes from Harry Redknapp. I don't know if you saw them. Did you see them?
No, I didn't.
I'm just trying to get them up. Here we go. So he says, there's a huge disconnect between the club and the fan base at the moment, which is why everyone in the stands are calling for Maurizio Pochettino to come back. Give the players some belief they can compete, and the tide will start to turn with the fans. If supporters see that effort, spirit and fight, they will back Tudor all the way. One thing the Croatian cannot do is go into the dressing room throwing teacups around, screaming at the players to sort their act out. Even if this is a difficult group of players to deal with, they are the ones Tudor has to use between now and the end of the season. He is stuck with them, so you have to work with them and not against them. A clear out is most definitely needed in the summer, and not just when it comes to players. The new structure upstairs certainly needs looking at as well. Oof. So Harry Redknapp throwing some shots at Vinay and Lange over there.
Yeah, I think he's spot on in everything he said there. I think Tudor, I understand there's been a problem with potential professionalism and stuff in the dressing room when Frank was here, but I think Tudor needs to come into the dressing room, try and understand why it's gone as badly as it has, what the problem the players have with the last manager, how he can motivate them, how he can get into their psyche and get them giving that little bit more, that little bit extra. And I think that's the appropriate way. I understand there's going to be some fans wanting to go into the dressing room and threaten to fight everyone and cause, and getting everyone needing a bit of a clip around the ear in terms of what's happened this season. And maybe Tudor has that side to him. I'm sure he does. He seems to be the kind of guy who definitely had that side of he's not going to take any shit, and he shouldn't. But I think from the off, he's got to come in, try and understand: is it just the side of play? Was it the manager? What is exactly the problem with why you didn't respect the last guy? And because he's absolutely right, these are the guys you have to trust. And as much as we can say strip Romero of the captaincy, do this, do that, at the end of the day, you need to get these players on side in a very short space of time.
You can't upset the apple cart too much.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, 100%. I think Redknapp has definitely got his finger on the pulse with those comments. But yeah, I don't think I've heard anyone not talk about Lang and Vinay in a negative light. Like, I think it's actually a general consensus now within the Spurs fan base. These guys are not fit for purpose. These guys need to go, and they need to go quick.
Absolutely. They've done a horrific job. Their incompetence has been there for all to see, in my opinion, especially with even the news now with Heitinga. I think it confirms it even more. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
With the kind of heat that's on the Lewis family and the ENIC 2.0, what have you, do you think like the majority of where we're at right now in terms of the situation since the handover between Levy and to the Lewis, like, is it mainly on Vinay and Lange, or is there a big part to play with the Lewis family here?
No, it's mainly on Vinay and Lange, for sure. I mean, in terms of the Lewis family, I don't think they have they're clean either, in the sense that ENIC have been in charge for 25 years now. I understand that these Lewis kids technically haven't been given the reins up until recently, but I just find it hard to believe that this is them with a clean slate and it's a new Tottenham. Joe Lewis is still their dad. I'm sure they've been in and around the club and whatever, and conversations, and I understand they probably themselves haven't had any power, but how much are they just going to change things, or are they just going to want to keep profits rolling? I don't know. I'm sceptical about them for sure. But when it comes to how badly the football side has gone ever since Levy's gone, I definitely put the large portion on Vinay and Lange, because they've been there since before Levy, and they had a lot of power, and they are the continuation from what was happening before. And they're the ones who were very big on Frank. They're the ones who have been in charge of transfer windows and stuff like that. They're the ones who have been in charge of keeping Frank as well for so long. So for sure, I think Vinay and Lange are the ones mostly to blame, because they're the ones making the footballing decisions. That's what I mostly care about. But yeah, I don't think the Lewis family should get off scot-free. But I think if you're asking me who am I mostly aiming at, I'm definitely Vinay and Lange right now.
Yeah, I think they cop most of the blame right now. And you're looking at when Vinay first came in, in that first interview, how many times did he mention the word empowerment? Empowering this, empowering that, empowering me to make the decisions and all this kind of stuff. I think it wasn't his first interview. It was the first interview after Levy left, when the Lewis kids came in. That's when that interview came out. It was all talking about empowerment. So I think what has happened here is that the Levy family have given the reins to V9 and Lange, and they haven't had too much say in the footballing decisions that have happened at this football club. Obviously, that's changed now when you've seen the incompetencies of keeping Frank, and they've had to step in and they've had to actually sack Frank themselves. But this has got to be a learning curve and an eye opener for the decision making of the Lewis family. They need to realise the situation now, and they can reverse this. They can reverse this by sacking V9 and Lange and bringing in competent people to be the decision makers at this football club.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So,
because I don't think that it's been a problem with like finances and stuff like that. I think the money's there. I think they're willing to put the money in. They've spoken about kind of raising the wage structure. Whether they're actually going to do that obviously remains to be seen, and we need to see the proof in the pudding for that. But the reality is, we offered a big financial package for Antoine Semenyo. Obviously, he was never going to come, and he went to Man City and everything like that. So the financials can all be there, but you can't attract the players. So what's the point? You need competent people at the club to manoeuvre the situation in a better way and to use the finances in a better way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And at the end of the day, if the Lewis family are just, victims of trusting the wrong people in terms of V9 Lange as they come in and they do have the best intentions, then we'll find that out in time. But for me, I'm still sceptical about them. But their biggest problem at the moment is the trusting of these two bozos we currently have in charge of all the footballing matters, and that's been a major failing. But then again, they were in charge before the Lewises technically took control of the club. So, I guess we won't really know if it was just a case of them trusting them was a problem, or they've also been a problem. We'll find that out in time. But I'm just saying, I think it's only right to be sceptical of what they're doing.
Got a super chat here from
Southeast
Coys saying, Ben, what's your debate ender against fans that don't want Poch next season? In my opinion, we're in no position to turn down a manager that knows how to navigate this board while competing. I mean, I don't know if I have a debate ender or anything like that, but I think it's the only way that only person Spurs have to turn to. I think he's a manager that can get the players on side. I think he's a manager that knows how to work with youth. I think he's a manager that knows the club, loves the club, and has acted unbelievably well in the four walls of this club under incredibly difficult circumstances, and probably in terms of financials, more difficult circumstances than we actually have at the club right now. I think the club are in a different kind of stratosphere than when Poch was here last time. And I think in terms of his man management style, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I think it will work so well with the likes of Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall and the young talent that we have to flourish at this football club. I think he can get us back competing. I don't think he can get us to the heights that we were at last time he was here in Champions League finals and competing for leagues, but I think he can get us a relevant team in terms of being back in that Champions League hunt once again. And I just think it's something that needs to happen because it's just an easy win. It's like an easy fix in terms of bringing unity back to this football club. And that's what we need first and foremost. We need unity. We need someone that knows what he's doing, and we need someone that can nurture the young talent that we do have at this football club. And I think he ticks just so many boxes right now.
Yeah, pretty much agree with everything you said. For me, I think right now we are going to struggle to attract the top class managers that we want, and I think there's one very good one sitting there wanting to be here, ready and waiting. And there are reasons to think, has he learned from his experiences, and could he be a better fit? Well, we'll have to wait and see on all that front, but he's a manager who loves the club, who understands the club, and hopefully as well he comes into the club in a different moment. Last time he was here, he was hamstrung with how much we were willing to spend, and as he said before, we were focusing on this, that and the other, stadiums and hotels, or we've still got a hotel to build, but all these other stuff. Right now there's going to be a lot more money to spend. Hopefully he'll have more trust as well. And there's obviously a very good manager there, so there's a lot of reasons why it could work for me. So I'm definitely willing to give it another go. Again, if there was a Alonso or a Nagelsmann or a Tuchel, if they're willing to come, I think I'll probably go in that direction. But seeing as that's probably not possible, Poch is an extremely good fullback option, I would say.
I saw a report yesterday, or maybe it was this morning, that Manchester United are looking at Nagelsmann for their job come next season after the World Cup, which will be interesting. But
I heard Madrid and Poch, someone said.
Yeah, I saw that as well, but it wasn't from the most reputable source. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it wasn't Udogie, it was Defensa Central, which ain't great. But I'm seeing a lot of comments here saying, well, Poch had the best squad in the Premier League and he won nothing, so don't bring him back. And I was, first of all, he didn't have the best squad in the Premier League. He built an unbelievable team, but he did have nowhere near the best squad. We had a good 11. That was about it. After that, you're looking at the bench. We had, a Lamela that couldn't stay fit. We had the Nkudus and the Ng's and these kind of guys. Like, literally, we had a good first 11, and that was it. We never got the tools to build him a good squad. He kept calling for it. We always wanted it, but it just never happened. We went 2 transfer windows without spending a penny under Pochettino.
What do you think about Martin Lipton? Did you see him on Last One on Spurs?
No.
He says people around Poch have been speaking to Poch about the Tottenham squad. He claims that Poch thinks there's more talent in the squad now than when he took over. That's what he said. That's what apparently Poch thinks.
I think that's just him trying to get the job, to be honest. I don't think he believes that. I think... I understand we're 17th at the moment, or we're 16th at the moment, but when he took over, I know he took over a team in 6th, but there was a lot of players who we thought, this guy's not good, that guy's I agree
not
with
good.
that, and I agree with the sentiment that this squad is a lot better than what it's been showing over the last couple of years. I do agree in that sense, but do we have anyone as good as Hugo Lloris?
No.
Do we have anyone as good as Kyle Walker? Do we have anyone as good as Danny Rose? Do we have anyone as good as Jan and Toby? Do we have anyone good as Dembele, Eriksson, Wanyama, Harry Kane, Son Heung-min, Dele Alli? Like,
The point being, but you're thinking about them at their prime, though.
that's when Poch had them.
Not when he took over.
Oh, he's saying when he took over, the point of when he took over. I still don't...
You had a Kane who was...
I guess, because when he took over, like, Aaron Lennon was still playing, Yunus Kabul, Adebayor...
Kane wasn't Kane, was he? We had
Yeah.
Soldado Adebayor. We had a Vertonghen who didn't want to be there, partnered with Kabul, who was ageing. As you say, Walker wasn't even seen as that good at that point. Rose was seen as like an average.
If he's talking about at the point of where he took over...
when
then
he took over Tottenham.
Yeah, then I think there might be a case for it. Because I've said to you many a time, I don't think we're in too much of a different position. I know we are in terms of league position, but in terms of state of the squad, of, at the back end of Sherwood to where we are now, I think we've got a lot of players who, if developed in the right way, can turn into top players for us. You're looking at, obviously everyone knows about Vertonghen, Van der Ven and Romero, Udogie, he could turn into a top left back. I think Porro, Spence, I think these guys have developed right, can turn into top players. I think, João Palini is a very good player, whether he stays on or not remains to be seen. You've got Bergvall, Archie Gray, you've got Odebear, these kind of guys, if they're developed in the right way, I think they can really flourish. I really believe that.
I think there is a good case to it, because the squad he inherited at Tottenham was full of just over the hill old players, probably on big wages, who a lot of maybe a few mercenaries as well, and it was just it took a while for him to weed all of that out of the squad, and we had a big fire sale in that.
It took about a year, didn't it?
Yeah, Kabul, Lennon, Adebayor, Soldado. Norton, he just needed to get rid of all these guys and get rid. And I don't know if we have to do that to the level now, but there's obviously a lot of players we still have to get rid of. But right now, that's not going to be an issue in terms of aging players and stuff like that. I think everyone's going to buy into him quickly. I don't think in terms of... I understand Frank had some problems with professionalism and stuff, but I think that's more to do with Frank, in my opinion, than the players. I think the players are willing to buy into a manager if he can get them on side and he can get them playing the football they want to play. I don't think it's going to take a lot for them to get them on side. I think Frank was so pragmatic with his football, and he was so and he just wasn't a motivator. He couldn't get these players on side, and also it was a big departure from Ange as well in terms of how he would his mentality to Frank's mentality.
What would be interesting, how we could settle this is to do a combined 11 of Poch's
First
the
game.
general kind of team of Poch's first season to the team we have now. And I think a lot of players that we have now probably get in.
If you did a Poch, his first 11 at Tottenham.
Let's do it. Let's get it up.
Well, Poch's first 11 at Tottenham.
I don't know about his first 11, but like
Yeah, because
his
that's
most.
what he took over. That's his first 11.
Yeah. You could do his first 11, or you could do after he weaned out the crap like towards his last few 11s. But let's do it. Let's do a combined 11 of Poch's first season to our team now. Because I think a lot of our players will get in.
I think it makes sense to do his first 11 because his first 11 on the opening day, because that was his team. Like when that's what he's taken over.
Yeah, but also at that point he didn't know who he wanted to use, and kind of first 11s.
Well, after pre-season, that's what he decided, wasn't it?
Maybe go like halfway through the season,
Or like the Chelsea game 5-3.
or maybe just a bit before that.
Bit before that.
All right, just go to first game. Go on, go first game.
First game. One sec. Tottenham. We actually won this game.
Yeah, Eric Dyer was at right back, wasn't he?
So.
And I think we got to base it on like how we were feeling about the players at that current moment in time as well, not what they became.
Yeah, of course. How do I just get the bloody lineups? Ah, here we are. So for Tottenham,
So what was it? It was a 4-2-3-1.
4-2-3-1.
Okay, so in goal,
Lloris.
So Lloris against Vicario, I think Lloris gets in.
His back four was Carl Norton at right back, who got sent off after half an hour.
Okay,
Carl Norton.
so Porro gets in for sure.
Left back Danny Rose.
So Danny Rose at that moment wasn't amazing. I probably think Destiny Udogie was better than Danny Rose at that moment in
At
time.
that moment, yeah. Danny Rose was seen as pretty average up until Poch got him. Centre backs Eric Dyer, who just signed on his debut, and Eunice Kabul,
So I would say both of our centre backs get in.
definitely. Midfield, Bentaleb, Capu, and Eriksson.
So Bentaleb and Kampu don't get in to our team right now, I don't believe.
Eriksson had a pretty decent first season, but it wasn't like he didn't set the world alight. I
No,
remember.
but we knew the talent that he did have though.
Was he seen as better than what Xavi's seen as now, though? Probably not. Like Xavi Champions League, maybe similar. Maybe similar.
He came with a big reputation, Ericsson, didn't he?
Yeah, he did come with. He came with I would say a good reputation. I would say Xavi came with a bigger reputation. I would say,
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
but Eriksson's first season probably went better than Xavi's until this day, because he was pretty decent first season. But it wasn't amazing. I'd probably sneak Eriksson in there.
So in the midfield, you go for like Paulinho Gallagher, let's say, or Paulinho and Sarr, whoever it may be, over those two.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll put Ericsson in there.
Eriksen.
Right wing.
All right, wing. So it looks like we played Lennon on the right.
So I think that Lennon was obviously a declined Lennon massively. So
Yeah.
So kudos for sure.
Left wing Lamella.
Lamella.
We liked Lamella, but he barely played that first season, if I remember.
Injuries, wasn't it?
Just injured constantly.
I would put Lamella probably over our left wingers.
Yeah, probably because he came with big money, and it was like, oh, once he gets over those injuries, he's going to be amazing.
I think Lamella. There was a bad rap given to Lamella because of the injuries, but he was a good servant to the club, Lamella.
Then up front, Emmanuel Adebayor.
Adebayor over. Well, Adebayor was off the back of a good season there under Sherwood.
He was,
Sherwood
actually.
kind of revived him, didn't he?
He was, but was he seen at that point as better than what Dom is now? Maybe.
I think so.
Probably, actually.
I think so, yeah. So
Even
what
though
we're
he fell
saying
flat.
is that 3 players get in. Adebayor, who was shipped off pretty quickly. Eriksson, who became an absolute star. And who
Lamella.
And Lamella, who was like a substandard player
So
in
that
the Lamella team.
is the mess that Poch inherited at
Yeah.
Tottenham. So I think
So
that is okay to say.
where was Jan Vertonghen? He must have been injured or
Been
something.
injured, yeah, true. And Vertonghen, and obviously Walker came back in. I assume he wasn't on the bench.
But if you read out that squad, that is that's the starting 11. But on the bench, you had Soldado, Holtby, Townsend, Kane, Dawson, Friedel, and Ben Davis. And Ben Davis is still here, which is
Ben
crazy.
Davis is still here.
But like, that is the level of quality that we were dealing with when Pochettino first came in. And I think, we've got much better quality now, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Dembele was there, but he was seen as not particularly great at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You had Paulinho, he had to go. Townsend, he actually wasn't terrible. I remember he was going to go to the World Cup, wasn't he? And then he got a big injury.
Yeah, but he fell out with Pochettino because of that fight with the coach on the pitch.
Chadley, he actually had a good season that season, Chadley.
Nasir was decent for us. Scored at the Emirates that season.
Fazio, he was rubbish. Yedlin, Chiriches. Obviously, Vertonghen was off the back of a season where everyone was saying maybe sell him because he didn't want to be there. So,
I think if you compare squad for squad, I think our squad right now, there's a lot more to be hopeful about than the way we perceived that squad then.
So I think Poch is right.
Yeah, he is right. Well, there you have it. Bring Pochettino home.
Bring Poch home. So if you can do that with that squad, what can you do with the one we got?
Thing is, he had Paul Mitchell, though, didn't he? To bring in Toby Alderweireld, to bring in Sonny.
Yeah, Wanyama came in.
Wanyama.
Yeah,
So,
we need some good recruitment, that's for sure.
yeah. So is it we want to bring back Paul Mitchell? Is there anyone else that we can bring back? I don't know. Or not even bring back, just bring in terms of the sporting director, because that is going to be...
Ridiculous overrating of this squad, says Scott.
Is it, though? Is it really, though? We're talking about players that didn't even make it under Poch.
In terms of that squad, how is it overrating? Like, the players we have are much better than what I just read out, I think. Like, we have... The players there were awful. Even at the time, we didn't rate them that highly. Maybe Chadley gets in. Like, would he get in the squad now? Probably.
Chadley would start left wing for us now, for sure.
Dembele.
Musa, of course.
I mean, the rest, just like Fazio's not getting in. Dyer at centre-back's not getting in.
We probably had two goalkeepers then that were better than our first choice.
Or Friedel and Lloris. I don't think Friedel ever played that.
That's
season.
a great set of three keepers, though. Lloris, Vorm and Friedel.
I'm sure Friedel didn't play at all that year.
No.
44. No chance. Was Ben Davis better then or now?
Don't know. He's decent now, man. he's come in and put in some shifts for us.
Oh, God. Anyway.
Yeah.
Shall we look at this article?
Yeah, there's been... Well, actually, there was just one more super chat. From Southeast Coys again, saying also, with back-to-back relegation scare season, don't think anyone should go out on loan next season. Rather hear players complain about lack of game time where we are right now. Oh, mate, I want to see Poch get his hands on Mikey more. Mikey, I was watching the Rangers game yesterday. Did you see any of it? Mikey was class.
Yeah, played well.
He played really well, heavily involved in the first goal that they scored. Or I think it was the second goal, actually.
Class. Apparently Donnelly looked decent.
Oh, did he, yeah?
Sunderland, I heard.
Okay.
Lancashire also apparently had a goal unfairly ruled out.
Oh, really?
Apparently should have stood.
Yeah, Mikey looked really good yesterday.
All right.
All right, well, there's this article I don't know too much about, but...
Basically, there's an article written by Alison Rudd on The Times. Article's been going viral yesterday on Tottenham Twitter. It set Tottenham Twitter ablaze when it was posted. The title of this article is called Thomas Frank Should Be the Most In-Demand Manager in Football. And we're just going to go through it because I think there are some... She sums up his time at Tottenham quite incredibly, I think. And I want to get your reaction to it, and I want to hear what the fans think of it, because I think it's baffling the way
Do you
she
think
talks about.
this article was made to rage bait us Spurs fans?
Maybe. But apparently she does have just something against Tottenham. That's what people say. I don't know who she is. But I want to just read some of the most important points. It says, the most desirably horrible coach in the world right now, ? It has to be Thomas Frank. Think back to when he was appointed by Tottenham. The only criticism of his move from Brentford was the Dane had no big club experience, that life had been sweet and organised and contained in West London, and that the media spotlight being in charge of Spurs would be a shock to his system and that one might struggle with him. Well, now we all know about the things that were alien to him. He understands that fan bases can be entitled and cruel and impatient, that not all clubs are run as a streamlined and sustainable model like Brentford, that having 11 senior players injured does not give you license to play defensively in the hope of securing a few precious points, that being realistic and pragmatic can be misinterpreted as lacking in imagination.
That is such rubbish. What is she talking about? 11 first-team injuries get you...
Does not. She's saying what we learnt was that apparently 11 injured players doesn't give you the license to play defensively.
Well, he hasn't had 11 injured players from the start of the season. Like, literally, we've been playing this dross football all season. Even from the start, like, the injuries came a bit later. What about before the injuries? You're not gonna take that into account.
Literally from the first game, he was playing defensively. Like, yes, we were getting some results, but he was still playing defensively. And then the results.
We tried to play on the counter attack against Burnley first game of the season, and we won 3-0.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the greatest game, was it?
No. She also says he understands now that fan bases can be entitled and cruel and impatient. Calling out the fans for being entitled, cruel, and impatient.
What we entitled about? We just don't want to be in a relegation battle. That's when it started getting toxic, when we were getting close to the relegation zone.
And I don't think we're entitled for not liking what we're seeing. Forget it. Also, that's obviously for sure in a relegation zone. If we weren't in that relegation zone, would we be as frustrated and impatient as we are? No. But being in a relegation battle coupled with the god-awful football I think Tottenham have been probably more patient than they should have been. It's been terrible. She says that being realistic and pragmatic can be misinterpreted as lacking in imagination. That's so his football is just that he was just realistic and pragmatic. That was what his football was.
No, I think she's having us on, this woman.
No, I think
whoever she is. I really think she's having us on. This is rage bait at its finest.
She goes on to say, in the coming weeks, Frank will excel and assess his 8 months at Tottenham head coach and maybe even smile ruefully, because many of his doubters, before he had even crossed the North Circular, wondered if he could possibly know how to navigate the Champions League, having had no experience of European competition. And yet the fact he left Spurs with the club above Madrid, Barca and Man City in the final standings in a very solid 4th spot was entirely overlooked by his detractors. There was the UEFA Super Cup final against the mighty PSG, which Tottenham lost only on penalties, in which Spurs played some entertaining football, but no one mentions that either, unless trying to claim all Frank's European exploits were somehow accidental.
Look, I've said about last year's Europa League that it was great to win it. It was unbelievable, one of the best nights of my life that night in Bilbao. But actually, when you look at it, who did we actually play from the group stages all the way to the final? You know, we played pretty much nobody of note up until the Frankfurt game. Frankfurt was probably the hardest team that we played in the whole tournament, in my opinion. So the same has got to be said to judge Thomas Frank in terms of that was the most easiest Champions League group campaign that anyone could have hoped for.
Yeah, and I
understand about Copenhagen, Slavia Prague, Bodø Glimt.
We played 4 of the bottom 6.
Exactly.
So,
you know,
there you go. But I think it's one thing finishing 4th in a table in a group stage, but it doesn't mean anything. I understand he never got the chance to finish the job because he got sacked, but finishing 4th in a Champions League table does not mean anything. It's not an achievement. It's not like finishing 4th in the Premier League because you get Champions League, whatever. Finishing 4th gets you nothing. Yes, it gets you top 8 and you missed the punishment round, but it doesn't mean anything. We won a trophy last season. That means something. I understand you can sell whatever you want about who we played and whatever, but we went through all the rounds and we actually lifted the trophy. That is what we got. It's very different to finishing 4th in a Champions League qualifying group stage.
But the level of team has to be taken into account, who we played in this Champions League group phase.
And that
it has to be. Like, look at the 4 wins. We had 4 wins, right? In the Champions League group phase.
5. We beat Dortmund as well.
All right, fine. Dortmund was very impressive the way we beat them, but they were down to 10 men after, half an hour, 20 minutes. We beat Copenhagen. We beat Slavia Prague. We beat Villarreal in like the most stodgiest game.
One with the early own goal. And
And that was it. And Borussia Dortmund. And who was the other
Frankfurt.
win? And Frankfurt. Frankfurt
already out.
Frankfurt was still a decent win going away to Frankfurt, but
they also finished near the bottom.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, those 5 wins don't smack like, oh wow, what a team, what a manager we have here. You know what I mean? They're teams we should be beating.
And Boda, we should have lost by a lot. We got lucky. Monaco, we were lucky to not lose that game by 3 goals. So, like yes, fine, he won those games, and fair enough.
That Champions League group phase papered over so many cracks in terms of his management.
But she's claiming it's overlooked by his detractors.
That's
absolute
nonsense.
And also, she goes on to say that, you know, the PSG game, and that was evidence that he can play entertaining football. We scored with 2 set pieces. Don't get me wrong, I was entertained by the fact we were competitive against a good PSG team who I expected us to get battered by. However, in hindsight, they had no preseason. They were clearly off it. They clearly were not at their best. There was an opportunity to get at them in that game. We did score from just 2 set pieces and barely created anything else. And
we looked threatening though. We did look threatening.
Did we have any chance apart from the 2 set pieces?
No, it's not. I think we looked threatening without having the chances, and it was his first game as Spurs boss.
I'm not criticising him. I'm just battling against the narrative that was proof that he could play entertaining football that game.
No. And we never saw anything of that ilk again throughout his tenure. I know we had two good games against PSG this season.
Yeah.
So that's got to work in his favour, because I think he managed 2 good games against PSG in the group phase, but we won neither of them.
No.
We drew the first one, going 2-0 up in the last 5 minutes. And the second one, he came up with a decent tactical plan for that game, but we conceded 5 goals, or 4, was it 4 or 5?
5-3.
So I was actually happy at the end of that PSG game when we conceded 5, because I thought, you know, this could be a sign of us turning the corner, but it wasn't.
She goes on to say there was a good deal of snootiness about Frank's lack of glittering CV. He loved coaching, but okay, forget this paragraph because it's just about his old stuff, what he's done. His story is sought that Americans love, the self-made man who battled on because he knew he could make a difference. But we often offer less love to such characters. I don't think that's true, but anyway. Much has been made of the Spurs players finding him negative or distant, but they probably disliked more the fact that life was relaxed under Postecoglou and Frank made them work. If Frank pushed them, it was because they needed to be pushed. After all, the Dane put a piano in the players' lounge at Brentford's training ground because Mbeumo liked to practice on it. That hardly supports the notion of Frank as a distant and overly demanding figure. He was looking for players who wanted to work for him and instead found them hankering instead for a life less organised.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that moment, because it's hard to make a full judgment on it when we don't know about relationships behind the scenes and we don't see what he's like on the training pitch with his players on a one-to-one basis. I mean, that is very much about the inner workings of a dressing room and the training ground. It's hard to make a real judgment on it.
Yeah, but she's saying they didn't like Frank because he made them work and it was relaxed under Ange.
Yeah, I mean,
what is this nonsense? She says Frank putting a piano in the training ground is evidence of how he's not such an overly demanding figure.
I think what this is a PR push.
It's a massive puff piece on him.
This is a PR push from Frank's team saying, come on, get us into work quickly.
I think some of this stuff is absolutely baffling. Frank inherited a team that had finished 17th and needed fixing. He therefore worked diligently to that end, but the fans were not much interested in hard work that looked like hard work. They wanted magical dust. They wanted Frank to be a saviour while doing all the furious paddling under the water, unseen, while making jokes and neglecting the importance of set pieces.
What is this rubbish? Seriously.
So Tottenham fans weren't interested in the work that Frank had to do unless it was magic dust.
It's nonsense.
She said we liked Ange because he made jokes and neglected set pieces. That's what we wanted.
We saw a guy that had no tactical awareness about his play in terms of being at a so-called Big Six club.
He didn't have a way of playing on the ball. It's just that simple. We had no plan A. People say Ange didn't have a plan B, but Frank literally didn't have a plan A. That was the
he
problem.
did have a plan A. His plan
On the
A.
ball.
His plan A was, under no circumstances, pass it forward in the midfield. Whatever you do, get the ball to Kudus and let's try turn him into Messi. Take around everyone on the pitch and spam crosses into the box. And if if he's injured, let's try get Spence to take on everyone, or let's get just Porro in that position where he can constantly spam crosses in the box. That's all it was.
He had no possession based way of playing, to control games. We just didn't know how to control games.
He doesn't care about
possession.
control.
He doesn't compare about that. Yeah, he doesn't care about that. That was his big issue. When you're a big team, you've got to have an in possession way of playing to control games. That's how most teams get their joy and win games. Even people who accuse Arsenal or whatever they want to accuse them of, they dominate possession, they pen teams in. That's what they do. Yes, they rely on set pieces, which maybe goes to a problem they have in breaking teams down. But that's not intent. That's not due to intent. They intend to. They just maybe don't. Whether they don't have the quality or whatever, but their intent is we're going to dominate you, we're going to suffocate you, and yes, if we need to break you down with a set piece, so be it. But we control the game. That's not Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank is we're gonna get the ball. We're gonna try and either win a set piece or get a cross in. That we have no kind of ambition to control the game. That is what I've seen from Thomas Frank. There was a keenness to pigeonhole Frank as a coach who demands physicality and pressing, and yet he was famous in his home country for tiki-taka possession. We see this version we expect to see rather than what is on show. When circumstances allowed, Spurs could be very fun to watch. It's just that the circumstances were not favourable all that often.
The only circumstances that Spurs were fun to watch in is when we played teams very much inferior to us, like the Slavia Pragues and the Copenhagens. That was the only time we were fun to watch.
Even in those games, I would argue we weren't. I would say Copenhagen, maybe Slavia wasn't that fun to watch.
Yeah, Copenhagen was.
Even if you remember those games, how did we score our goals? Copenhagen had to give us an open goal for the opening goal. Slavia, was it 2 penalties and an own goal?
Yeah, but still, in the Copenhagen game, we created many chances that day, and we kind of penned them in and suffocated them. We did. No matter how the goals came, that's what happened in that game. The same against Brentford in the Premier League. We were fun to watch that day. We battered them that day, and we created multiple chances. But you can literally count these games on one hand. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I don't think she can argue that the circumstances were not favourable that often. That often is what she's saying.
No.
It's absolutely madness what she's arguing. I remember there were points, I understand he's had injuries, but I remember there were points in the season where we were getting that injury list down. I remember we were saying here on predicted lineups, there's only a couple now. So I understand, a large part of this, for a large part of the season have been injuries, but to the level of injury in terms of what he's had on the pitch to play with, he's had more than enough to have a game plan which is much more adventurous than he's shown.
As like we said, he had more than Pochettino in his first season.
Exactly. And then the last couple paragraphs, he is as far from being stuck in the mud as it is possible to get. When PSG won the Champions League by closing down the opposition at goal kicks, he must have raised an eyebrow, as this was already one of his tactics. Frank is innovative, and in a world where football veers back to the future and from side to side, his vision and attention to detail is all the more valuable. So wait, she is claiming that closing down the opposition at goal kicks is a Thomas Frank tactic. What is she on about?
I'll say there have been times where we've been decent and won the ball back high up the pitch and created goals and chances from it, but we've never been able to sustain that. That's the reality. And I genuinely believe what this is a play to say, you know what, they didn't value me there. I'm still a good manager. I want to be hired in a Premier League job again. This is all this is.
In the end, his time with Spurs was a marriage made in hell. He sums himself up as emotional and passionate and in need of a stable and calm club. That is why it was so beautiful at Brentford. Tottenham will have taught him what he already knew deep down, that not all clubs are patient or realistic.
I agree there. That's the one right thing that she said. It was a marriage made in hell.
That bit I agree. I just disagree with the fact that, look, if he had us in 7th and we panicked and sacked him because we weren't 4th, I would understand what she said. Even if we had us in 10th, But the reality is he has us in 16th in a relegation battle. So the claim that we are just not patient or realistic, that's the issue here, I think is crazy. The fact is we stuck with Aaron stuff throughout the whole last season while we were down the bottom. So we did stick with that. I know we sacked him in the end, but we didn't sack him during the season. So in terms of us being patient or realistic, I don't think that was the issue. That might be true, but I don't think that was the issue.
The thing is, right, with Thomas Frank, I don't sit here and think he's a terrible manager, albeit he didn't show much of him being a good manager while he was here. I just don't think it was the right fit. I'm no under illusion that he can go to a Crystal Palace, that he can go to a team like that in the bottom half of the Premier League and probably do a decent job and get them potentially in the lower half or the top half or whatever. But he's not a manager for a top 6 club. He's not a manager for a club that are trying to get Champions League football or even Europa League football. He can overperform with a Brentford or a Crystal Palace or a team like that. I've got no doubt about it. But he's never going to work at a top club. He's just not.
His football doesn't scale up. And I think we were Tottenham were guilty of thinking because he overperformed with Brentford, that means he can just scale up his football and he can overperform with Tottenham on a lower wage budget. It's not how it worked. And if you looked at his football, it is not football of a team looking to be playing in the Champions League or looking to dominate the opposition and win games more often. He always leads games in the balance. It's very pragmatic. There's no set way of playing in possession. The team are very much restricted in what they can do. They're much more focused on the opposition and not focused on what they can do of themselves. And that is his football. And that's no way of managing a club of the size of Tottenham Hotspur. And I think we made that big mistake. And I think, to be honest, I think if there was anyone in that boardroom watching his football and actually analysing it, they could have come to that conclusion. But unfortunately, they're not looking at the right things. They're looking at just purely results and the amount of goals Brentford scored and how he overperformed his wage budget and all this kind of stuff. But those aren't the right things to look at when giving someone the job. You have to look at exactly what kind of football he likes to play, what his mentality is, and whether they can scale to a club like Tottenham. And we neglected that, I think.
Look, I think there's a lot of similarities to Spurs' Nuno appointment, to Spurs' Frank's appointment. You know, Nuno, off the back of, decent jobs at Wolves and stuff like that, and shows he can be a good manager in the Premier League. But he came to Tottenham and he showed he lacked any sort of way to create chances in an in-game model. And this is exactly the same with Thomas Frank. Like, how many times will we be sitting here throughout the season this year so far being like, this is just so similar to Nuno.
Yeah.
Looking at the metrics, looking at the numbers behind what we're trying to do. It's just like there's too many similarities here. And look, even I was saying that, but I was saying still give him time. I think he can turn it around. Obviously that wasn't that never happened and he's gone now. But Nuno is not a bad manager. Nuno's a good manager in his own right. But Nuno's not a manager for a top 6 club. And that's exactly the same.
Yeah. Last paragraph says, I will not dare to argue it could have ended happily in North London. The fans simply did not take to him, and every dropped point stoked their antipathy. But supporters of his next relatively calm club will have many reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah, they will if it's a Crystal Palace.
Depends who it is, yeah.
But if he goes to
but also,
Chelsea, then he's going to be out the door quicker than anything.
But also, is there a case to say, when it comes to Brentford, like, there is something there where the manager doesn't seem to be that important. He's not the most important thing. And I've heard Brentford fans talk about this, where each manager comes into the Brentford system, does really well, gets them promoted or gets them performing really well, and then thinks they're too big for Brentford because of how well they've done, and they go on to new jobs and don't do very well because actually they didn't realise how they were being supported by the structure of Brentford rather than their own quality. And maybe the same is happening for Frank.
Yeah.
And as much as he did brilliant in Brentford, you got to look at maybe it's had more to do with Brentford than Frank. Maybe that is the case. And at the moment, the evidence suggests it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you change the whole structure there of all the coaches, all the top players, and the manager, and they just keep getting better. And it's happened so many times with Brentford. This isn't like the first example of it. No. It's happened time and time again.
Every manager happens with.
So, yeah, there's a massive case for it. But look, like I said, I don't think Frank is a bad manager. I think he can still do well in the Premier League, but not at the top level.
Well, that is her article. Is Thomas Frank the most... Well, Thomas Frank should be. It wasn't even a question. It says Thomas Frank should be the most in-demand manager in football. Also,
I want to know how much Frank and his agent paid her to write that.
It was also juxtaposed, by the way, a year ago in in December 2014, when I think we had just lost 4-3 to Chelsea. She wrote an article about Tottenham, about Ange, saying Ange is a cult leader who's turning Spurs into a parody account. That was her title for that article. And then a year later, she's talking about how even though Frank failed more miserably than Ange, by the way, had worse points total at this stage, says Thomas Frank should be the most in-demand manager in football.
When she wrote that Ange is a cult leader thing, that's more evidence that she's on the Frank payroll because Frank wanted the job.
Exactly. This Alison Rudd, I don't know how many more articles I'll be reading of yours in the future. That was absolutely atrocious.
She's on Frank's payroll. That's the only explanation here.
Someone check the bank account. There's some insider stuff going on there.
Yeah, 100%. Some foul play here in the media. But look, I think that is it from us today. I want to know your thoughts on that article in the comments section below. Do you think she speaks a lot of sense, or do you think, like us, that it's absolute jargon and nonsense in that article? But that is it. We'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.